What if the person you love most heard you describe them as your backup plan? What if they discovered every doubt you'd ever shared about your relationship? Today's story will make you think twice about the words we use when we think no one's listening. I'm about to share a story that shows how careless words can destroy the most precious thing in our lives, and how sometimes we don't realize what we had until it's gone forever. Before we dive into this emotional journey, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment and let me know where in the world you're watching from. Are you team second chances or team know your worth? Let's connect. My name is Sarah, and at 28, I thought I had figured out love. After a series of heartbreaks with charming but unreliable men, I was exhausted. You know the type. They sweep you off your feet, make your heart race, then disappear when things get real. Then Mark came into my life through a mutual friend who wouldn't stop telling me what a good guy he was. When we first met, I'll be honest, there were no fireworks. Mark wasn't the type to command a room or make heads turn. He was quiet, thoughtful, and incredibly reliable. Our first date was pleasant, comfortable even, but it felt more like meeting a friend than a potential partner. But here's the thing about Mark. He did everything he said he would. When he promised to call, he called. When he made plans, he kept them. After years of dating men who treated commitment like a suggestion, Mark's consistency felt like a breath of fresh air. 2 years later, we were living together in a cozy apartment. Mark handled his responsibilities without being asked, remembered important dates, and genuinely listened when I talked about my day. My mother adored him. My friends called him husband material. On paper, he was everything I should want. But if I'm being completely honest, something felt missing. That wild, can't-catch-your-breath kind of love I'd always imagined. It wasn't there. I cared deeply for Mark, but it felt more like loving a best friend than being head over heels in love. Last spring, my best friend Emma came over for one of our regular wine nights. Mark was supposedly working late, so we settled in for some much-needed girl talk. The conversation naturally turned to relationships, as it always did. "So, how are things with Mark?" Emma asked, refilling our glasses. "They're good," I said automatically. But Emma has known me since college. She could read between the lines. "But?" she prompted with that knowing look. I sighed, feeling the wine loosen my tongue. "I don't know, Em. Sometimes I wonder if I'm missing out on something more electric. Mark is wonderful on paper, stable, kind, dependable. But sometimes I feel like I chose the safe option because I was tired of getting hurt." "You were pretty clear about that from the start," Emma reminded me. "You said you wanted to try dating someone different for once." I know, and it made sense then. It's just, when I see other couples who seem so passionate about each other, I wonder if I'll ever feel that way about Mark. He's still not really my type, you know? Sometimes I see guys who are more like my usual preferences, and I can't help wondering what might have been. "But you do love him, right?" Emma asked gently. "I do," I said, and I meant it. "It's just different from what I expected. It's not that crazy, butterflies in your stomach kind of love. It's more comfortable." What I didn't know was that Mark had come home early. He must have heard every word because the next day, everything changed. Mark became distant overnight. Where he used to greet me with a smile and ask about my day, now he barely looked up from his phone. Dinner conversations became stilted and awkward. When I asked what was wrong, he'd just say nothing in a way that clearly meant everything. For a week, I watched the man I lived with become a stranger. He'd come home, eat dinner in silence, then disappear into his home office for hours. I started texting Emma about his strange behavior, venting my frustration and confusion. Then came that Friday evening that changed everything. I walked into our kitchen to find Mark sitting at the table looking like he hadn't slept in days. His eyes were red-rimmed, and there was something in his expression I'd never seen before, a mixture of hurt and determination that made my stomach drop. "We need to talk," he said, his voice unnaturally calm. I sat down across from him, my hands already shaking. "What's going on? You've been acting strange all week." "I heard you," he said simply. "Last Friday night with Emma, I came home early and heard everything you said about us. About me." The blood drained from my face. "Mark, I've had a week to process this," he continued, holding up a hand to stop me. I heard how you settled for me because I was the safe choice. How I'm not really your type. How you wonder about what you're missing. You weren't supposed to hear that, I stammered. It was just girl talk. You know how we vent to our friends. Do you really think this was just venting? His voice cut through my excuses like a knife. Because it sounded pretty well thought out to me. It's not like that, I insisted, panic rising in my chest. Yes, maybe in the beginning I was choosing someone different from my usual type, but that was because my usual type was terrible for me. Mark's laugh was bitter. So I should be grateful you lowered your standards? That's not what I meant. The frustration was building now. Look, yes, at first it was about feeling safe and secure, but I grew to love you. I do love you. You love what I provide, he said quietly. Stability, security. But you don't love me. That's not true. There's more, Sarah. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. I read your messages. You did what? The outrage hit me like a physical blow. How dare you invade my privacy like that? Your privacy? Mark's voice rose for the first time. That's your main concern right now? You want to talk about violation of trust? How did you even get into my phone? You're not exactly careful with your passwords, he said flatly. And after what I overheard, I needed to know if this was just one conversation or how you really feel. What exactly did you see that was so terrible? Mark's composure was eerily calm as he began to recite. There was the part where you told Emma that I don't exactly set your world on fire. Or the messages about how you still look at your ex's social media because he was the one that got away. Oh, and my personal favorite, how you were still attracted to those types of guys, but you're older now and know better. Each word felt like a slap. Those were things I'd said in what I thought was private conversation, thoughts I'd never intended for Mark to hear. Those messages were taken completely out of context. I tried desperately. Emma and I joke around. We say things we don't really mean. It means everything, Sarah. Mark's voice finally broke. Do you know what it feels like to read that the woman you love is still attracted to other types of guys? That she's just older and knows better now? That I'm the sensible choice, not the one you actually want? What about you violating my trust by reading my private messages? Mark stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Are you serious right now? You're the one who's been lying about your feelings for our entire relationship. I haven't been lying. I do care about you. Caring isn't enough, he said quietly. Not when I love you completely and you're still wishing for someone else. Everyone says things to their friends sometimes, I pleaded, tears starting to fall. We can work through this. Then tell me the truth, Sarah. How do you really feel? Because from where I'm standing, it seems pretty clear. You settled for me. I'm not your type. You're still attracted to those other guys. What part am I misunderstanding? I struggled to find words that could fix this, but how could I explain that I did care about him while also sometimes wondering about what could have been? Mark shook his head slowly. I think we have very different ideas about what a relationship should be. We can fix this. No, he said with painful finality. We can't. The trust is broken for both of us. I violated your privacy, and you settled for me. I think this is where we go our separate ways. You're breaking up with me over some stupid texts? I am breaking up with you because you don't love me the way I love you, Mark said steadily. And I deserve better than being someone's safe choice. The finality in his voice sent panic coursing through me. You can't be serious. You're throwing away our entire relationship over one conversation and some venting texts? This just confirmed what I think I've known for a while, Mark sighed. You've never looked at me the way you look at other guys. I was convenient, reliable Mark, the guy you settled for. That's not fair, I protested through my tears. You're making this decision without giving me a chance to explain. What's there to explain? Your own words were pretty clear. The next few weeks were a blur of apartment hunting, awkward conversations with mutual friends, and the crushing reality of starting over. Mark had been more than just my boyfriend. He'd been my stability, my comfort, my partner in building a life. Moving into a tiny studio apartment across town felt like stepping backward in time. Everything was harder without Mark. splitting bills, handling household emergencies, even just having someone to talk to at the end of a long day. What hurt the most was how our friend group reacted. When I tried to explain my side to some of our mutual friends, I discovered that Mark had already told them what happened. Not the details of my private messages, but enough that they understood why he'd ended things. "He's really hurt, Sarah," our friend Lisa told me awkwardly. "And honestly, some of the things he said you wrote were pretty harsh." I felt betrayed all over again. Now all our friends were judging me based on Mark's version of events. 3 weeks after I'd moved out, I went back to collect more of my belongings. Mark had promised to be out for the afternoon to give me space. Walking through the apartment that had been our home felt surreal. Everything looked the same, yet nothing was. I noticed Mark had already removed the photos of us from the walls. In what used to be our bedroom, I opened the nightstand drawer looking for an old book and found something that made my heart stop. A small velvet box. Inside was a beautiful engagement ring with a receipt dated just 3 weeks before our breakup, right around the time he'd overheard my conversation with Emma. I sat heavily on the bed, staring at the ring. Mark hadn't just been my safe choice or stable option. He had loved me completely, enough to want to spend his life with me. And I had destroyed it all with careless words about settling. When Mark returned unexpectedly early, he found me sitting there with the box in my hands. "You were going to propose," I whispered, my voice breaking. "I was," he acknowledged quietly. "That night I came home early and heard you talking to Emma. I was coming home to plan how I was going to do it." The cruelty of the timing felt like a physical blow. "The problem isn't that I heard you, Sarah," Mark continued. "The problem is that you felt that way at all." "Would you have said yes?" he asked, his gaze intense. "If you knew I wasn't what you really wanted, would you have said yes anyway?" My hesitation was answer enough. "That's why we can't fix this," he said gently, "because even now you're not sure." 6 months later, I had settled into my new apartment and thrown myself into work, trying to fill the Mark-shaped hole in my life. Dating apps sat unused on my phone. The thought of starting over with someone new was exhausting. I hadn't seen Mark since that last day at our old apartment. Our friend group had awkwardly divided, with most choosing his side. I couldn't blame them. Mark had always been the more likable one. "Maybe this is a chance for growth," Emma suggested over brunch one Saturday. "To figure out what you really want." "What I want is my life back," I muttered. "I had a great setup with Mark." Emma frowned. "See, that's part of the problem. You're listing practical things, not anything about Mark himself." "That's not fair," I protested. "I miss him too. The way he made me laugh, how he always knew when I needed space, the little notes he'd leave in my lunch." "Then why were you always complaining about him? Always comparing him to your exes?" I had no good answer for that. The truth was, I'd gotten so used to having Mark in my life that I'd started taking him for granted. I'd focused on what he wasn't rather than appreciating what he was. Then came the day that broke me completely. I was at our old favorite coffee shop when I spotted Mark with another woman. She was naturally beautiful with dark curly hair and an easy smile. As I watched, Mark laughed at something she said and reached out to take her hand. He gave me a small nod when he saw me. I managed to return it before practically running out the door. Outside, I leaned against the building, trying to catch my breath. Mark had moved on while I was still sleeping in his old t-shirt and crying over our photos. He was with someone new, someone who probably adored him without reservation, someone who would never make him feel like a consolation prize. 8 months after our breakup, I hit rock bottom. I'd been laid off from my job, my savings were running low, and dating had been a series of disasters. Those exciting types I used to go for weren't any more appealing now than they had been before Mark. In a moment of weakness, I messaged him. "Hey, saw you're doing well. I'm happy for you. Actually, not really. Lost my job, about to lose my apartment. Missing you." His reply was politely distant. "I'm sorry to hear that. I hope things turn around for you soon. Take care of yourself, Sarah." That was it. No offer to talk, no suggestion of meeting up. Just a polite brush-off. A year later, Lisa reached out with news I'd been dreading. Mark and his girlfriend Olivia were engaged. The proposal had happened at the coast, at the spot Mark and I had always talked about visiting someday. They just seem so right together, Lisa said, then winced at her own words. I ran into them once at the grocery store. I was a mess. Unwashed hair, no makeup, wearing the same sweater for 3 days. Meanwhile, they looked like the picture of happiness, shopping together with a shared list. Sarah, Mark said politely. How are you? Great, I lied, painfully aware of how I looked. Really good. We just moved into our new house, he said, his arm automatically going around Olivia's shoulders. Congratulations on the engagement, I managed. Thank you, Olivia said kindly, showing me her ring. It was simple but beautiful, clearly chosen specifically for her, not the one I'd found in Mark's drawer. As they walked away, I heard Olivia's laugh. Bright and carefree, the sound of someone who was exactly where she wanted to be with exactly who she wanted to be with. The ultimate irony became clear in that moment. I had settled for Mark because I thought he was the safe choice, the practical option. I'd been afraid of missing out on something more exciting, more passionate. But in doing so, I'd missed out on something real and lasting. Mark, meanwhile, had refused to settle. He'd refused to stay with someone who didn't fully want him, who saw him as less than her first choice. And because of that courage, the courage to walk away from something that wasn't right, he had found exactly what he deserved. Someone who chose him first. Someone who saw his worth without hesitation. He didn't settle, and now he was truly happy. In a way we probably never would have been if we'd stayed together. I had settled, and now I was alone. That night, I deleted all my dating apps. I stopped looking for the next exciting guy who would inevitably disappoint me. I started therapy, trying to understand why I'd always chased the wrong things, always valued the wrong qualities in a partner. Mark had moved on to better things because he knew his worth. Maybe someday I would learn mine too. But for now, I lived with the knowledge that I had been given something precious, something real, and I had called it settling. The greatest loss of my life came not from what someone took from me, but from what I failed to see in front of me all along. This story shows us something profound about love and self-worth. Sometimes we're so focused on what we think we want that we miss what we actually need. Mark knew his value and refused to accept anything less than genuine love. That's a lesson we could all learn from. The words we speak in private moments matter. They reveal our true feelings, and sometimes those feelings hurt the people we care about most. Sarah learned too late that appreciation isn't just a feeling. It's a choice we make every day. If this story touched your heart, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps our channel grow. Share this video with friends who might need to hear this message about knowing your worth in relationships. And don't forget to subscribe to Emma Stories and hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest uploads. We share real stories about love, loss, and life lessons every week. What did you think about Mark's decision? Was he right to walk away, or should he have fought for their relationship? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. Until next time, remember, you deserve someone who chooses you first, not someone who settles for you. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next story.